What if the thing quietly stealing your energy, your memory, and maybe even your life was something that was actually happening when you sleep?
My goal is not to have people suffer like I did. I always felt isolated. I never realized that I was one of a billion people out there suffering with sleep apnea. The film is an experience. It takes you through the journey of what it's like to be living with sleep apnea in the home, within the family, within the community. 4 characters from entirely different places, different age range, different ethnicities, etc., chronicled their journey with their own cell phones over a 2-year period. And what they captured was something that I never could have captured. Your life is a lot more valuable than those short-term costs. And if you can find a solution just like I did that works for you, then it can really make a huge difference.
I'm not here to yell at you to put your mask on, otherwise you're a horrible human being. This is all about how can we improve your sleep quality, make it fun to go to sleep, make sleep actually restorative where you feel better in the morning. All of these things are ultimately our goals. Hello and welcome to Sleep is My Waking Passion, the podcast where we get real about sleep and how it shapes your life. I'm Dr. Alison Kole, a triple-boarded pulmonary critical care and sleep medicine physician who's learned to thrive despite having chronic insomnia. And now I'm here to help you do the same. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sleep is My Waking Passion. What if the thing quietly stealing your energy, your memory, and maybe even your life was something that was actually happening when you sleep? I'm speaking very specifically about obstructive sleep apnea. I am very, very glad that you are here today. I want to talk with an award-winning filmmaker. Okay, so my guest is a brilliant filmmaker. His name is George T. Nierenberg. He's best known for his award-winning documentaries, Say Amen Somebody and No Maps on My Taps. His newest project is called Out of Breath, and it's a deeply personal journey into the world of sleep apnea because George himself lives with the condition. And what he does is he takes you through various stories of people sharing what it's been like for them to get the diagnosis and be treated for sleep apnea. So before we go on, what I'd love for you to do is please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it, because the insights in this conversation could truly change, or believe it or not, possibly even save a life, because people can die from obstructive sleep apnea. Thank you, George, for joining me today. I'm very excited to have you. I know this has been a long labor of love. You've been at this for many years talking about Out of Breath.
That's correct, over 7 years.
Yeah.
So it's been a long haul, but it's been worthwhile. You know, my goal is not to have people suffer like I did. You know, I always felt isolated. I never realized that I was one of a billion people out there suffering with sleep apnea. You feel so alone. And it wasn't until I finally got a diagnosis many years ago and proper treatment. And that's what motivated me to make the film.
Can you talk with me about your journey to the diagnosis of obstructive sleep apnea? What was that like for you? Did it take a long time? Because it sounds like it may have.
20 years.
20 years until a diagnosis?
Well, I had been diagnosed with sleep apnea. I just wasn't properly treated. You know, I could never get used to the CPAP. That was gone. Remember, 20 years ago was a long time ago. CPAPs were pretty primitive. Even dental appliances were incredibly primitive at that particular time. And then I tried the triple piece surgery, and I convinced myself that it worked, even though I was still falling asleep at the wheel. And finally, when I fell asleep at the wheel with my daughter and grandchild, and my daughter had lived with me while I was suffering from sleep apnea, and then I denied it, that I realized that it had gone way too far, that I needed to finally really confront the fact that I really had it and I could no longer live in denial. And that's what motivated me to find another solution. And it discovered the dental appliance. And ultimately, that's worked for me. There was a device that was being used at that time that John Remmers had invented, where they put a robotic arm on your jaw and moved it forward while you were doing a sleep study, and they could determine whether or not you were a candidate for the dental appliance. And sure enough, I was. And it really helped me a lot.
I believe you're referring to the matrix titration?
Yes, exactly. It was a matrix. The company went out of business. Very few people were able to continue with it, but it was a genius thing that a lot of people had bought into. It's just that when the company went out of business, there was no, and there have been many advances in sleep medicine since then, the watch pat, things like that. There's other ways of diagnosing sleep apnea. not necessarily specifically for the dental appliance until now. ProSomnus has this new device that actually measures the oxygen, the titration, everything. It's an amazing thing. It was just approved, and I've heard a lot about it, and I'm very excited to get it. They were one of the early supporters of the film.
That's wonderful to hear. So can you talk us through what a viewer of the film might learn? And what have you learned even from the journey of making the film that you found fascinating and worthwhile sharing?
I'm going to tell you more. It's not what they're going to learn. It's what they're going to experience. The film is an experience. It takes you through the journey of what it's like to be living with sleep apnea in the home, within the family, within the community. 4 characters from entirely different places, different age range, different ethnicities, etc., chronicled their journey with their own cell phones over a 2-year period. And what they captured was something that I never could have captured. The most intimate moments of waking up in the middle of the night and your wife is not in the bed, and how that impacts your marriage and your marriage falling apart. The fact that how it impacts raising 2 teenagers by yourself when you're a divorced mother. You can't stay awake for your children, and you're losing all that time with them. And then you realize as they're growing up how much time you've actually lost because you were asleep during that entire time, or having ongoing surgeries that didn't work, being so frustrated, or being on the brink of having a marriage collapse and having somebody who is so frustrated with you become your caretaker and being helpful in finally finding a solution. And the revelation that comes out of what both people were suffering with, that they realized at the time when they finally realized what's going on and how they share that moment together. I don't want to give away what happens with the film, but Victor never knew that his wife was listening to his heart throughout the night because she thought he might die. And they have 3 children, 2 of them on the spectrum. And that was something she was living with, and he never knew that. So it tells those kind of stories. And the reason I made the film the way it was is because the experience of what people go with living with sleep apnea will always be the same. The technology may change, medicine may change, but what will always be the same is what the patient goes through and what their families go through living with patients. So that's what I wanted to capture, because that's what I felt would resonate most with people. And that's what I felt would bring people together to talk about sleep apnea and find new solutions. And also for those 80% of people out there to recognize that they have those symptoms and maybe they should be treated. So that for me is success, and that's actually what's happening. I'm seeing it happening as people watch the film. I'm seeing conversations happen that never would have happened before. I'm seeing people talk to one another that hadn't talked to each other before, different modalities. So it's very exciting for me about the potential.
I would say that from the medical education perspective, you described something very profound, which is that you created an experience for people. An experience means that, yes, you may have learned something that you didn't know before, a factoid, if you will, right? Or a statistic. But it's not the same as learning that, and now it's paired with an actual experience that you can relate to. And then that translates way deeper into the recesses of our brain, into getting stored in our memories in a way that is very different. And I think it really adds to medical education and teaches us from the other side of the coin as a sleep physician how we can better relate to our patients and how we might be able to better get our patients to understand what we mean. You know, sometimes we get lost in the woods of 2 big words and assuming that our patients may understand something that we feel is like we would get judged by another colleague for not knowing that answer, right? And we have to understand that the perspectives are different. And I think you really showcase just that. I also really want to say that one of the lessons I learned from watching your film that I found particularly inspiring from the clinician perspective is you did walk us through a case where someone really wasn't feeling the treatment options and wasn't really feeling that they were going to be able to be compliant with them. And it really wasn't until they had serious medical issues that they began to really reevaluate that. And one of the things that we talk about is for a lot of us sleep providers is we see sleep as foundational to our overall health. We want to get people excited to deal with sleep disorders way before they have 20 medical issues that we're also trying to co-manage, because treating sleep apnea when you have other problems sometimes makes it even more difficult to get that sleep apnea under control. So kind of reframing sleep is more as a preventative strategy, just like we tell people to eat healthy and exercise. Sleep has been described as a pillar of health. I would argue it's really the foundation upon which all the other pillars of health need to sit. So I think you've done a remarkable job of that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think what's most important for me is that it had to be authentic. That was the most important thing. It had to feel real and couldn't be challenged in that way. And by having the people film it themselves, there's no better way of having the authenticity shine through. And the other thing that happens in the film is all the 4 characters are successfully treated. So you leave feeling hope and that there's hope for you as a patient to be treated. But you see the role of the caretaker in that process of getting them to the final conclusion. And that's very inspiring. So I wanted to leave people feeling like, well, maybe I should just go out and go to a doctor and have myself tested. Maybe I should do that bridge to get beyond, oh, that's what I'm really feeling. That's why I'm tired all the time. I had no idea. So I'm hoping that it opens up doors for people once they see the film and those conversations as it happens along with them. Whether it's a member of the family whose father refuses to go on a CPAP and sees the film with their father, and it opens up a conversation that they never had before. There's so many different ways that this film can be used. In bigger picture, in the conversation, having a public screening where you have both doctors, dentists, primary care doctors who aren't even seeing what their patients are going through, aren't even asking questions about it. Suddenly you see that they're interested in some way because they understand it's an underlying reason why a particular patient is really suffering from depression, ADHD, all those things that they might treat differently if they'd known about sleep apnea, its direct relationship to that.
I think that's a really, really important point, and thank you for bringing that up, George. If you could change one thing about how society sees sleep apnea, what would it be for you?
It's an interesting question. I think if society sees it on a very personal level, not the big picture, but they see it as an individual impact on their own lives. If 1 billion people worldwide suffer from it and 80% don't even know that they have it, it's one of the most underdiagnosed conditions in the world. When you hear those statistics, they don't mean a lot, but when you're an individual isolated in the world, suffering from these things, you don't know that you're one of those people, and all you know is you're suffering, and your life is going by year. And if it can impact just one person, that for me is success.
What do you think are some of the barriers to people actually going to get diagnosed? Obviously, through your film, you're raising awareness. But even through your own personal journey from the patient perspective, what do you see are some of the barriers, and what would you tell people who may be wrestling with those barriers?
Well, I think, just like myself, the CPAP, the notion that you're going to have to be wearing that thing for the rest of your life is frightening. When I was, diagnosed early that I had sleep apnea and I tried the CPAP, I was much younger. There's somebody who's in the film who's 20 years old and she's given the CPAP. The notion that you're 20 and you have to wear a CPAP for the rest of your life is daunting. There has to be a better solution than wearing a CPAP. And she didn't qualify for a Inspired device because she didn't have the proper rating. And the fact that was the only alternative for her, it's daunting. But it's also about the airway and it's understanding how the airway works, understanding how you breathe, understanding the role of your nose in your breathing and the blockage in your passageway. It's having doctors really examine patients properly, doing the proper x-rays, doing the proper evaluations so they're treated properly. And, it's so interesting. I heard a story just yesterday that one of the dentists that I'm working with went to a hospital and went to the sleep department, and there was a dentist's office right across from there. And they don't treat sleep apnea, just a regular dentist. They know nothing about it. The fact is that dentists are not taught about treating sleep apnea, and doctors aren't either. There's a system that's kind of broken in many ways, but you have to start somewhere. And I'm hoping that my film is a catalyst to starting something and starting a conversation in some way that ultimately, in time, bridges the gap and the silos so that people start talking, and it ultimately ends up having the patients treated more successfully.
I think since the time that your film came out, one of the lovely things is that there have been even more treatment options that may be in the pipeline that I think I would agree with you have changed the outlook for a lot of patients.
Mm-hmm.
I have someone who, after I speak with you, I'm actually going to give her a call because she, I know, has a lot of nervousness about even considering a machine. She's got pretty bad sleep apnea. And so, maybe we might try some weight loss on her. We've talked about other options, and I'm going to go over those again with her to see if we can find a solution that she'd be even willing to entertain. Some of the other barriers include the cost of things like the oral appliance therapy, because even when medical insurance may cover some of it, I came to learn just recently that about 40% of Americans are on these high deductible plans to make it affordable per month, but then their out of pocket is a lot. So often things like oral appliances will be covered, but that could mean an out of pocket cost for that patient. In my neck of the woods, a decent dentist, maybe $3,500. If you're getting a Prosomnus device that has more specialty type of features that could be upwards of $5,000. Sometimes people charge $7,000 for some of these things. It's not all dentists are trained in sleep, as you mentioned. Not all dentists who are trained in sleep even take medical insurance or want to get into that billing. So you're really dealing with sort of a scarcity of those folks that really have the ability to know all the treatment options, which is exactly why you and I are talking today, because I want to do everything I can to get people excited about sleep, particularly about sleep disorders such as sleep apnea that are highly prevalent, as you mentioned, and, are associated with all sorts of badness that probably pick us off the planet sooner rather than later.
Yes, but I agree with you that there are more and more options, weight loss drugs, various appliances, but cost is an issue. I've had a conversation with a dentist just recently. He's trying to figure out a payment plan. He has too many people that want his services, and he doesn't even know how to service them or how to get reimbursed for them. Then I saw another dentist who I'm very close with, who I saw he had a payment plan immediately on his site, so that people know they can pay over a time period. So I think dentists are trying to work with patients in a fair way. The more that can happen, the better it will be. But it can be expensive, but your life is a lot more valuable than those short-term costs. And if you can find a solution, just like I did with the dental appliance, that works for you, then it can really make a huge difference, far more than falling asleep at the wheel and endangering your grandson and your daughter. That for me is far more costly than the dental appliance that you might pay for you when you weigh the costs, or falling asleep at a job and getting fired. These are things that happen all the time, and I know what it's like because that happened to me. I didn't even have the wherewithal to tell the person who fired me that I have a disease. I wasn't even thinking about that.
Well, I have to say, too, one of the exciting things just in the dental space, and speaking with orthodontia, I know it's a lot more controversial per se because there's different camps and schools of thought, and changing camps and schools of thought requires a lot of data and excitement about it and pursuing that. But things like palatal expansion may be out there to start to help people breathe a little bit better. So I'm really excited for the future of sleep medicine. And I would encourage anyone listening here, especially if you know someone or it's you and you kind of resonate with this conversation, to please think about checking out Out of Breath and making that appointment with the sleep doctor to go over those options and what might be right for you. You want to work with a sleep doctor, which I can attest that majority of people in my sphere are this way. We're very open-minded to various treatment options. I'm not here to yell at you to put your mask on, otherwise you're a horrible human being. This is all about how can we improve your sleep quality, make it fun to go to sleep, make sleep actually restorative where you feel better in the morning. All of these things are ultimately our goals. Can you tell us, George, where listeners can watch Out of Breath? What are the next steps to actually getting this out there?
Well, you just go to our website, sleepapneafilm.com. There's a QR code, I think, in the lower right is where it's supposed to be. And then you'll go to our website, and you will either, if you're a group, you can either find a way to rent it for the group. If you're an individual, you can watch it individually. We'll send it out to you. And then you'll get to have the experience of watching the film and the impact. We'd love your feedback. We always love to hear the feedback of how the film impacts people. I also want to compliment you on what you're doing. I just think it's so important that you're so passionate about what you do and so empathetic and caring about patients and what they're going through. And it's so important for people like you who are incredibly well-spoken, experienced, great communicators to be spreading the word, because it's people like you that are going to make that much more of a difference. The fact that you provided a platform for me is fabulous, and I very much appreciate it.
You are very welcome, George. Thank you so much for joining me today. And, just sharing your personal journey, sharing the journey of other people that you were able to get to actually record and share it's a perspective that is incredibly unique and, as you mentioned, quite timeless. It doesn't matter how long ago it was taped. If today's conversation resonated with anyone listening here, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. It helps us reach more listeners who might be silently struggling with sleep issues. You never know. That share could be the nudge that helps someone finally get diagnosed. Rumor has it that you're trying to get on PBS to be able to air Out of Breath. Is that true?
I would say it was not that we're trying. PBS wants the film. They've already offered it. They want to have a national broadcast. So we're very excited about it. And we're basically raising money from sponsors to get it on PBS right now. So we're in that process. And people can contribute on our website as well as a place to donate. And that will go directly towards the broadcast, the certain expenses that PBS requires. So we are raising money. We have a lot of sponsors very, very interested. So expect it on PBS, hopefully in the coming year.
If you could capture the sound of a healthy night's sleep, the way you've captured the rhythm of music and dance in your other films, what would it sound like to you?
It would sound like an incredible gospel singer just belting out a wonderful note. If you watch my film, Say Amen to Somebody, towards the end of the film, you hear some unbelievable gospel singers and the way they express themselves and the passage, the way they breathe. So much about gospel singing is about breathing, and it's actually taught in the film. And it's interesting. The opera singer Leontine Price was a fan of the film, and she commented very specifically about one of the gospel singers and how she was teaching the singers to sing. But it's that openness of letting it just the air out, and that's why our poster is a guy on the top of a mountain just like breathing. That's the ideal situation.
That's awesome. Thank you, George. This has been great.
Struggling with sleep? Dr. Kole is here to help. Whether you need a comprehensive sleep coaching program, suspect you have sleep apnea, or simply seeking a second opinion, she's available for consultation in New Jersey, New York, California, and Georgia, with more states coming soon. Schedule your free 10-minute review of services today to find out which visit is right for you at AskTheSleepMD.com and start your journey to better sleep with a trusted sleep expert.
Please be advised that the Sleep is My Waking Passion podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice. Always consult your healthcare provider for personalized guidance. For my full disclaimer, please visit AskTheSleepMD.com. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my free newsletter. Sweet dreams and happy listening.